We could feel the forest breathe before we ever saw it. A slow inhalation of mist and green that reached into our bones and made us question what we thought we knew about being alive in the world. The Amazon was not a backdrop. It was a presence, a living memory, an ancient pulse that neither flinched nor yielded to those who charted it on distant maps. We learned, almost at once, that history here did not begin with inked borders or written accounts. It began with the quiet patience of people who understood themselves not as conquerors of land, but as its custodians, conversing with the river, the canopy, and the shifting shadows of the forest floor. In the beginning of our journey into this place, our guide spoke of the Yanomami not as subjects of study, but as relatives in a broader human story, a reminder that every thread of humanity has its own weave and warp. When we first stepped into their world, the weight of centuries seemed to settle on us, not as a burden, but as an invitation to witness a type of time that moves with seasonal rhythms and ancestral memory. The earth here is alive with stories older than any colonial ledger, older than the notion of nation-states, older even than the first Europeans longing for discovery. We came with questions, as all outsiders do. We carried notebooks, cameras, theories born from distant classrooms and distant continents. But those questions dissolved quickly in the heat and humidity. Questions like, "Who are you?" gave way to deeper ones. What does it mean to belong to a place so ancient that its people's names are spoken in the language of rivers and storms? In those early days, we watched children play beside waterways that carved the land like veins, watched elders sit beneath the sheltering palms and speak of their kin as though they were stars in a sky that has always guided them home. In their laughter, in their silences, we began to feel a disquieting shift in perception. History here was not a line with a start and finish. It was a living presence that ebbed and flowed like the river in flood. The Yanomami inhabit a region of the Amazon that yields beauty and danger in equal measure. In this territory of winding watercourses and emerald expanses, beauty is not ornamental, it is elemental, interwoven with survival itself. Here the canopy is not a ceiling, but a cathedral. Ferns unfurl like liturgical rites of spring. Parrots wheel through shafts of golden light. And beneath all this, life presses upward and outward, defying any notion of stillness. To live here is to embrace a constant dialogue with the environment, to understand that every season writes its own history on the land and in the hearts of those who make their homes in its shifting shadows. The people we met do not speak of history the way distant civilizations speak of dynasties or dates. They speak through story, through ritual, through the living tapestry of their daily lives. Each tale is rooted in the first breath of an ancestor, in the steps that guided them through these landscapes before cartographers named them. We sat with elders who traced lineage not through documents but through memory, remembered journeys across rivers that nobody but the ancestors could describe, remembered encounters with neighboring kin, remembered the names of places that held meaning in a language that seemed to carry the textures of wind and water within its syllables. In those moments, we began to understand what it means to be human in a world that does not fracture experience into epochs, but sustains it as an unbroken continuum. And yet that continuum was not untouched by the wider world. We saw, even in conversations around the evening firelight, the shadows of forces beyond the forest edge, forces that spoke in promises of trade goods, in rumors of outsiders seeking gold, in whispers of diseases carried on the breath of strangers. The Yanomami did not greet these developments with naivete. They met them with the wary patience of people who have always known that not all who arrive by river are friends. We first heard about outsiders long before we saw them. Traders navigating the tributaries where fish leap like silver arcs. Prospectors cutting jagged scars through forest that once stood unbroken. Missionaries with voices that carried new words for creation and salvation. Each arrival brought with it a small, inexplicable shift, as though the world outside had its own gravity, tugging at the edges of an existence that had long flourished on its own terms. In the early encounters, there were moments of curiosity, cautious exchange, and sometimes wary retreat. We witnessed a negotiation over beads and metal tools, observed how the Yanomami assessed these new objects, not as symbols of progress, but as materials whose value was measured in function and future consequence. Their leaders, the shaman and elder councils, did not dismiss these arrivals outright. They watched and listened, studied the patterns of those who came and went, as if attuned to the murmuring strands of fate itself. And yet, even in their openness, there was an unmistakable tension, a quiet weighing of risk and potential. Disease, unseen and unforgiving, was the first true rupture. Smallpox and influenza, carried without intent, but without caution, spread like wind through tinder. Entire communities were suddenly faced with emptiness where once there had been song. We saw the hollowed eyes of those who survived, watched as they tended to the sick beneath handmade shelters, their laments a chorus that seemed to echo the tolling of an invisible bell. These were not tales of colonial conquest written in distant capitals. These were intimate tragedies, etched on faces that bore the pain of loss and the resilience of those still standing.
In those weeks of illness, we saw something born of desperation, profound compassion. The Yanomami, accustomed to treating ailments with ancestral herbal knowledge, gathered night after night to sing protective chants and share remedies passed down through generations. When the elders' songs met the quiet groans of the sick, the air hummed with a mournful beauty, people wrestling with mortality itself, not as a theory, but as a relentless, uninvited visitor. We walked with them through villages that had once been thick with laughter and children's footsteps. We saw hammocks empty in the dawn light, once snug with sleeping bodies. We watched the living fashion new shrines, simple, poignant, to honor those who had crossed into the realm of memory. It was here we first felt the magnitude of history's toll, not as a record in a book, but as a lived experience, a wound in the social fabric that would shape the way these people perceived the world beyond their rivers. Yet, even in the face of loss, life persisted in the Amazon. When the tide of illness receded, elders spoke of renewal, of remembering those gone, not through sorrow alone, but as part of a broader cycle of life and death. They taught us that grief could reshape empathy, that memory could become a source of collective strength rather than only pain. And in their voices we heard a profound courage born not of denial, but of deep acknowledgement that the world is at once fragile and astonishingly tenacious. As years passed, the rhythm of life in the villages showed us how the Yanomami adapt with a blend of tradition and pragmatism. We witnessed ceremonies that marked transitions, births, initiations, harvest seasons, each an affirmation of continuity. During these gatherings, the forest itself seemed to join in, the rustle of leaves, the drumbeat of rainfall on distant canopies, bird calls that punctuated the air like ancestral voices. To witness these rites was to realize that their culture was not static relic, but living art, continually fashioned by each generation's choices. Occasionally, shady emblems of external force crept closer, road crews and miners cutting through the edges of the terrain. We saw machines groaning like beasts in pain, tearing into soil that had known nothing but the tread of animal and human feet.
In council meetings beneath woven canopies, leaders spoke not in panic, but in a solemn calculus of risk. These were not abstractions. They were real people, with real families, trying to preserve what mattered without denying the reality of change. We saw miners erect makeshift camps, their radios and tools on display like alien artifacts. Some came with good intentions, others with desperation for wealth that eclipsed any concern for consequence. The river that once sustained abundant fish became murkier near the extraction sites, silt settling like a bruise over currents once clear. The elders did not rage in scenes of caricatured fury. Instead, they responded with a profound deliberation, walking to the edges, observing at dawn and dusk, cataloging each shift with a meticulous eye. They tracked the patterns of water flow, the migration of fish, the diminishing call of certain birds. This was indigenous knowledge in motion, a science born of intimate observation rather than laboratory design. We witnessed debates that took place under open skies, where elders spoke of negotiation and restraint, where younger voices called for firmer action. No council spoke with a monolithic voice. Rather, we saw fracturing within, a tension that history often hides, the tension between preserving what is sacred and confronting what threatens destruction. These conflicts were not simplistically framed in the narratives outsiders tend to craft. They were nuanced, fraught with love for the land and fear for the future, weighted by the legacy of past losses and future uncertainties. Through these times, we walked alongside families fishing at dawn, mothers weaving hammocks at dusk, children learning the stories of the stars, as if the night sky itself was an elder whispering lessons on continuity and change. We moved with the seasons, tracking the patterns of rainfall and flame trees opening like torches against the dusk. And through it all, we felt history unfurl, not in grand conquests or monumental battles, but in the quiet persistence of people choosing each day to remain present to life, to memory, and to each other. The arrival of missionaries layered another complexity onto this already intricate tapestry. Some spoke of salvation and offered medicine and tools. Others sought to remake belief systems, emplacing ancestral cosmologies with foreign doctrines. In many villages, this created fissures that were felt not as abstract theological debates, but as ruptures in kinship bonds. We sat in nights lit by oil lamps, listening as families spoke of conversations held in secret corners, some members drawn to the promise of new spiritual frameworks, others deeply rooted in ancestral rites that had guided their forebears for generations. These debates were raw, without theater, carried out in fragments of whispered reflection and heated exchange alike. They revealed how identity itself can be a contested terrain when the layers of external influence press upon the core of lived experience. We watched as some individuals departed with missionaries to distant settlements, while others remained, choosing the familiar cadence of ancestral rituals. Neither choice was presented as a grand declaration. Both were deeply personal and wrought with consequence. We felt the emotional gravity of those choices, the silent tears shed at dawn, the uncertain smiles shared at twilight. Over time, the Yanomami did not vanish into myth, nor collapse beneath the weight of outside forces. They endured, transformed by encounters both benign and devastating. We saw new practices emerge, hybrid ways of living, blending ancient knowledge with cautious incorporation of external elements. There were discussions of education and language, ways to teach younger generations not only traditional lore, but also navigation of the broader world with integrity and resilience. In these discussions, we sensed a collective intelligence at work, a wisdom that recognized history neither as enemy nor nostalgic relic, but as a teacher that demands acknowledgement of wounds and celebration of survival.
By the time our journey drew toward its close, we had come to understand that the story of the Yanomami was not a single thread, but a tapestry woven of many. It was a story of earth and sky, of river and rain, of laughter and lamentation, of choices made in dawn's quiet light and dusk's lingering shadow. It was a story of people who measured history not by battles won or lost, but by relationships sustained, stories passed down, and the breath of life shared between one generation and the next. When we finally parted from these villages, packaged as travelers with cameras and notebooks, we felt unmoored from the notion that history is something external, something to be watched from afar. What had begun as a quest to understand became instead a slow hum of belonging, a recognition that we too carry histories within us, shaped by choices, losses, celebrations, and the landscapes we cherish. In those final hours beneath the whispering canopy, as the river carried its steady refrain, we realized that history is not a monument. It is an ongoing conversation between those who came before and those who walk beside us now. In the end, the forest did not relinquish its secrets, but through daybreaks that shimmered with light on water and nightfalls that resonated with ancestral song, we learned that the deepest truths are not found in conquest, but in listening to voices that have borne witness to centuries of continuity and change, to laughter once cut short and renewed, to the unbroken rhythm of life that persists even in the face of forces that seek to reshape it. This is the legacy of a people who, like the river itself, endure, carving their course through history in ways that defy simplification, demanding that we see not just what happened, but what it felt like to live it. In their presence, we came not as conquerors of knowledge, but as humble listeners to a history that continues to be written in the rustle of leaves, the laughter of children, the whispered names of ancestors, and the endless flow of the great Amazonian waters.